Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining the Vetiva breakfast meeting. Today we'll be having a rundown of the equity and fixed income markets as well as updates from other African markets by our media partners at Frontier Africa Reports. We'd like everyone to know that this meeting is being recorded and the recording may be shared with third-party listeners. Also, the meeting is being streamed live on our Facebook page. That's the Vetiva Online Facebook page. During the course of the session, if you have any questions, you may send them using the Q&A or chat boxes respectively. Or if you're joining us on Zoom, you may send them using the comment section on Zoom. Also, at the end of the session, after all speakers are done presenting, we'll have a question and answer segment. And if you would prefer to speak, you may raise your hand and we would allow you to ask your questions. So very quickly, we'll be starting with Sean from our Global Equities desk, who will give us a rundown of equity markets. Good morning, Sean. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Chima, and good morning, everyone. So we review some markets in West Africa, and we'll be starting off in BRVM, where the composite index ended the session 31 basis points higher for a fourth consecutive days of green close. We've seen some level of positive sentiment in that market, and that filtered into the previous days performance. Though turnover declined by 32%, we saw a generally positive session as the day ended with 19 gainers and just 12 losers. We also saw some of the usual names appreciate, names like Cital as well as CFAO, while Sevier was also another gainer in that in the market for the session. Looking at the sectoral performance, all sectors closed positive, led by the agri sector. The agri sector gained 2.72% in the session. Going into today, we expect the day to close positive, and we also expect a week-on-week green close, as the week today return is already 2.43%. So we believe we don't see any major downward shock that will erase that gain that we've seen in the market already. Though we are guiding toward the activity level to moderate, but we believe there should be positive close in the market, but on thinner volumes. That's for the BRVF. Moving quickly to Ghana, we saw yesterday's session ended just on a marginally positive note, with a 4 basis point index appreciation, just like we saw in prior session, where the broad index was just up 1 basis point. That was on Wednesday. So yesterday closed just 4 basis points up as well. Activity levels stayed lower as both the volume and value in that session declined due to fewer trades on some of the bellwether securities like the likes of MTN, Societe Generale. So we didn't see as much turnover in that space. Not so much to really take away from yesterday's session, actually, as investors continue to take their time to enter into the market. So we're not seeing, yes, there are some level of upward movement in some names, but we are not seeing as much volume like we had seen in the earlier part of Q2. That was in April and sometime in May. We saw Total Ghana leading the gainers chart in yesterday's session, as MTN was the most traded security in the market. Year-to-date return still remains largely around 39%, quite healthy. And we see this fewer trade pattern to continue into today's session. So that's our outlook for today. We believe the session will continue. The turnover level in that session will continue to remain low, and we also expect to wait out investors to wait out the market on this last trading session of the week. So that's it for the Ghana market. So we move to Nigeria. We saw the 10 basis point gain by the benchmark
Hello, Shem. We can no longer hear you.
index cementing a positively looking at the returns up. Hello, can you hear me now? Is it better?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. All right, let me amplify as well. So yeah, like I mentioned, we saw gains yesterday, and the game pushed the market to its third consecutive gain for the week. As it looks like the good times are back in the Nigerian equities market. Dansem and Okumu stayed flat in the session. We've seen those two names lift market in previous session earlier in the week. So those ones stayed flat. Unilever with a 49 basis point appreciation alongside the likes of Stanbic and PZ supported yesterday's upward close. Activity level came in lower at 2.2 billion as there was no heavy cross like we saw in Nestle in previous session. Zenith and GT Bank specifically, they enjoyed some positive patronage. We saw good demand in those names yesterday across different client segment as both retail and institutional client bought those shares. We also saw a stint of foreign investors also looking at that name. Banking sector was quite active as the sector accounted for over 48% of market turnover. Then market breadth also stayed in the green as we saw 18 advancers against just 13 decliners in the market. So it was generally positive market just to consolidate on Wednesday's performance as well. So just to wrap up and to look at our outlook for the day, we see a positive week on week close is expected, seeing that the index is already 1.25 up so far this week. The index is expected to continue to show positive outcome as investors stagger their purchase into the market, just like we've always advised, I think in a couple of sessions before now, that just stagger your purchase into some fundamental names. So a few of them seem to be moving up now. And for us, we still see value in some tier one names, that's in the banking space and consumer goods space as well. And as oil price continue to surge and the demand in I&E window for FX are being met, we should expect investors to intensify their position taking in equities. Once we see those two factors continue to come positive, then investors will continue to take that positive position. Bearing in mind the positive or bearing in mind the decent appreciation in the FI space anyway, looking at rates being around still hanging around 9% for 365 days treasury bills. So that'll be it for the equities market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shem. Next up is Omarigie, and he will speak to us on the fixed income and currencies markets. Good morning, Omarigie.
Good morning, Chima. Good morning, everybody. I'll be taking a recap of yesterday's activities for the Nigerian fixed income market. I'll start with the money markets. There was no official liquidity figures for yesterday. We believe system is still in the positive region with an estimated opening balance of about 250 billion positive. We saw interbank rate tightening by over 200 basis points to trade around 17% levels yesterday from the 14% levels recorded on Wednesday. This increase in money market rate yesterday was spurred by increased funding pressure yesterday as market participants had to fund for the OMO auction settlement yesterday and also the settlement of the additional 98 billion that was sold at the NTB auction. We expect the money market to trade at higher levels today on the back of the FS retail auction that is happening today and also a possible CRRO debit. Moving on to the FS market, the parallel market maintained to trade around 502 naira to $1, while the earning window traded the high of 420.77 naira to $1, closing at 411.83 naira to $1. That's about 88 kobo depreciation from where it closed on Wednesday. And this was largely due to the significant drop in industry turnover as it declined by over 152.5% to close at $89.89 million yesterday from the $226.98 million recorded on Wednesday. We believe the Naira will continue to hover around these levels in the absence of any significant inflow of FS into the system. Moving on to the Nigerian Treasury Bills market, the T-bills market traded on a very active note yesterday as some players tried to book profit on their auction winnings, while others tried to feed their loss bit at the auction, NTB auction on Wednesday. The maturity that enjoyed the most action yesterday was the newly issued one-year paper, that's the June 9th, 2022. The bids on that paper were around 9.45% during the early hours of yesterday's trading session. As the trading session progressed, the bids moderated to settle around 9.35% levels. However, offers on that end hovered around 9.25% levels. As a result, few trades were dead on that end. Some trades were also consummated on the special NTB, that's August 30th, 2021. We saw offers on that paper crash to 8% levels from the above 9% levels recorded in the previous trading sessions on the back of the improved demand on that end. The dip in rates on the special NTB was also supported by the improved system liquidity as a lot of players were not keen at selling. The CBN conducted an OMO auction yesterday where they sold 30 billion, the same amount that they offered across the 3 tenors. On the short end, the total amount offered was 5 billion, subscription on that end was 7 billion, while the total amount sold was 5 billion. Marginal rate on that end maintained to close at 7%. On the mid end, the total amount offered was 5 billion, total subscription was 7.3 billion, total amount allotted was 5 billion. Marginal rate also maintained at 8.5%. On the long end, the total amount offered was 20 billion, subscription was 67.79 billion, total amount sold was 20 billion. Marginal rate also maintained to close at 10.1%. Our expectation for the T-bills market is that to trade actively to close the week as players continue to offload their NTB auction winnings in the secondary market. I'll conclude with the Nigerian bonds market. We saw activity pick up in the Nigerian bonds market yesterday as investors reacted to the outcome of the NTB auction. There was moderation of rates on the long-dated maturities, like the 2045, the 2049, and the 2050, while we witnessed slight bearishness on the short-dated maturities, especially the 2027 maturity. Offers on the 2027 improved to trade around 12.9% levels from the 12.7% levels in the previous trading session. We saw a lot of trades debt on that 2027 maturity as a result of the improved offers in the market yesterday. Our expectation for today is that the bonds market will trade on a bullish note to close the week on the back of sustained demand from players who are looking to cover their short positions in the market. That concludes it for fixed income. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Umar, again. We'll now hear from Temple Ashaju, who will give us updates across African markets. Good morning, Temple.
Good morning, Chima. Thanks a great deal for your markets, where the State Bank of Mauritius seems to be having a serious issue in that climb at the moment. They had taken a loan from the Central Bank Kenya a few months ago to acquire Chase Bank. And we understand that there's a tussle around payments of some revenues, remittance through the Kenya's revenue service, Kenya's revenue authority at this point. So now they are facing a tax charge of about $400 million for the purchase of Chase Bank at that period. Again, this has been worsened because the bank on its part, that's the State Bank of Mauritius, has refused to make available some of the documents, crucial documents that it has used to purchase the bank at that point. They were meant to make these documents available to the tribunal that the handling authority had actually taken the matter up with them. That was being declined by the tribe. Documents involved in their due diligence and feasibility arrangements for the purchase of that bank. In Uganda, exports to markets at the moment is currently challenged as well for Ugandan markets. As you know, there's been this internal trade war between Kenya and Uganda around issues of quality assurance. So the export of maize, sugar, and poultry products from Uganda to Kenya. Basically, the trade between these two countries, and of course, as it relates to the Democratic Republic of Congo and South Sudan, have seriously been challenged in the month of April.
Hello, Temple. It seems your network is a bit unstable.
It really was critically down. We all know about open shop in Kigali, Rwanda, as part of the Paul Kagame in that country. May was released yesterday. It came in at 7.5%, a critical decline from 8.5%. We all recall that last week they had the the central bank MPC meeting, where they had also cut down their rates. Part of the projection that the governor Addison had given is that there will be some moderation of 8% in inflation by the month of June. But what we see right now is actually below rather the target range of 6% and 10% that the central bank there has been expecting. Senegal on its part is expecting an expansion in its year-on-year inflation for the month of May. That is to be released soon. We'll be tracking that as well. In the southern part of Africa, you've got Ramaphosa giving approval to electricity generation for unlicensed companies. Their threshold used to be around 1 megawatts. Now, suddenly, Ramaphosa has expanded that to 100 megawatts, in line with the expectations, or in line with the conversation that they've been having with him lately. So in a surprise move, this happened, and it's been celebrated. Amendments in the Electricity Generation Act of Africa, where Egypt is expecting some positively to help support its health insurance program in that country. And finally, with the FTSE inclusion of Egyptian market bond, the state bonds, and the FTSE Russell index at this point is something that is also expected to help them drive some further inflows into that country. Some $4 billion has been expected. That was actually explained lately by the Minister of Finance, Mohamed Mati. And of course, Egypt is just one of those 13 countries that have been put on that particular index since it was launched a few months ago. These are some of the headlines we have to share with you this morning. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Sean, for those headlines. We can now take questions from the audience. If you have any question for us, you may use any of the chat box functions, or if you prefer to speak, you may raise a hand and we'll call upon you to speak. We have a question from BC Sanda, and he's asking, Is the rally and particularly foreign investors' entry just a spike or likely to be sustained? What's attracting them suddenly? I would leave that to Sean to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Chima, and thank you for the question. So we're looking at if the rally is just a spike, is just a spike or or is it likely to be sustained? I think what we've just seen is we are not seeing this particular demand, and like I mentioned yesterday when we saw those Dangote cement as well as some sort of and some level of demand in Okomu. They were just being specific. So we can only confirm or say or affirm that okay, these guys are back when we start seeing those rally across sectors and across the market. Currently, we're just seeing it in about two or three names. So we really can't confirm or largely they're still on the a few of the foreign portfolio investors that will speak to, they are still largely on the um, they are still largely on the sell side, and the ones that are done selling just want to take out funds. But the thing is, as like I mentioned, as oil price continue to we see improvement in oil price, we will continue to see that the queue in the earning window seem to we see some progress in that space, and we see that okay, foreign the currency is properly priced. Those are the challenge that we've had with these with foreign investors. And if these things continue to come out better, yes, we'll probably see them come back into the market. I won't call I think I would rather see these as a spike. It's not broad based. If you look at the normal banks, which you see that much liquidity in, we're not seeing that in this particular short rally, if I could put it, in this particular spike. A few of the guys we've spoken to have alluded to the fact that for Dangote Cement, because of the news around share buyback, we're beginning to see some investors coming, both local and foreign alike. Then Okomo, I think we mentioned previously that this is one of the good names in the market. I think was this sometime earlier in the week when I was speaking to the names there. Are both our short and long term names that we're looking at in the market. Okomu was one of it. So we didn't rule out the fact that investors are also thinking alike, and they're trying to take position in the agricultural space as well. So I'll see this as a little spike until we see broad-based demand and broad-based appreciation in from this investor. Then we can just call it some of resurgence in the market. But for now, I think they're just being specific with the name they're coming into. I hope this answers your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sean, for the response, and BC Sanda for the question. Thank everyone for joining us in this session today. If you have further questions after the session, please send us an email at research@vetiva.com, and we'll get a response out to you as soon as possible. We'll be ending the session here today. We thank everyone once again for joining. We hope that you have a productive rest of the day ahead, and we would like to see you same time next week, Tuesday. Good morning.